Hey guys, so entering into Acts 25, it begins right after Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus, and desiring to do the Jews a favor, Felix left Paul in prison. And so now 3 days after Festus had arrived in the province, he went up to Jerusalem from Caesarea, and the chief priests and the principal men of the Jews laid out their case against Paul, and they urged him, asking as a favor against Paul that he summon him to Jerusalem, because they were planning an ambush to kill him on the way. And Festus replied that Paul was being kept at Caesarea, and that he himself intended to go there shortly. So Festus essentially was saying, don't worry, guys, I'll take care of it. If he's innocent, I'll figure it out. If he's guilty, I'll figure it out. So, said he, let the men of authority among you go down with me. And if there is anything wrong about the man, let them bring charges against him. And so, after he stayed among them not more than 8 or 10 days, he went down to Caesarea. And the next day he took his seat on the tribunal and ordered Paul to be brought. And when he had arrived, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood around him, bringing many and serious charges against him. Notably, that they could not prove, it says. Once again, just false accusations. The wonderful thing is that when you have the truth on the side, it's a whole lot easier to protect yourself. When you get involved in all sorts of nonsense, when you start doing illegal, evil things, when you start living immorally, when you have things that you need to hide, then it becomes a whole lot harder to defend yourself. And the justice system isn't always going to succeed. Obviously, even here, Paul is detained at a time where he doesn't deserve it. Obviously, the justice system doesn't always succeed. I know that may be a surprise. Human governments are imperfect. But at the very least, having nothing that can be proven is a wonderful spot to be in when we can know that we're blameless before God and men. But Paul argued in his defense, neither against the law of the Jews, nor against the temple, nor against Caesar have I committed any offense. But Festus, wishing to do the Jews a favor, said to Paul, do you wish to go up to Jerusalem and there be tried on these charges before me? But Paul said, I am standing before Caesar's tribunal, where I ought to be tried. To the Jews I've done no wrong, as you yourself know very well. If then I'm a wrongdoer and have committed anything for which I deserve to die, I do not seek to escape death. But if there is nothing to their charges against me, no one can give me up to them. I appeal to Caesar. And then Festus, when he had conferred with his council, answered, to Caesar you have appealed, to Caesar you shall go. And Paul, either through the wisdom of God or through his own discernment, knew that there was something going on with the Jewish people, and he knew that Felix, before Festus, had allowed him to stay in prison because of a favor to the Jews. And the question is, did Festus know about the plot to kill Paul? He might have. He might have not. I am inclined to say he probably didn't and just wanted to have it be taken care of in Jerusalem since he didn't see it as a Roman issue. But either way, Paul was mindful of the situation and he used his wisdom and said, hey, no, I'm not going to be charged in front of the Jewish people. I appeal to Caesar. I'm not going to Jerusalem. I'm not going to fall into a trap. He was a wise man who is innocent as a dove, wise as a serpent, which is what we all ought to be as believers. But also, if I'm a wrongdoer and have committed anything for which I deserve, I do not seek to escape death. Do we have that same mindset about ourselves? I mean, it's very easy to say, oh yeah, I know the depth of my sin, right? But it is another to say, hey, there are earthly consequences when we do evil and bad things. And even though we are made a new creation before God, it doesn't take away the earthly consequences of what we've done. And so Paul here even says, hey, if I have committed something worthy of death, I'm willing to accept it. I'm willing to accept the consequences. So we have to ask ourselves, are we willing to accept the consequences of our previous sins, knowing that even if we are made a new creation, we have to walk in the light in light of the consequences and not feel entitled to some change of circumstance just because we're right before God now. We have to continue to do what we can to be right before men as well. And sometimes that means just accepting ongoing consequences. Now, when some days had passed, Agrippa the king and Bernice arrived at Caesarea and greeted Festus. And they stayed there many days, and Festus laid Paul's case before the king, saying, there is a man left prisoner by Felix. And when I was at Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews laid out their case against him, asking for a sentence of condemnation against him. And yet I answered them that it was not the custom of the Romans to give up anyone before the accused met the accusers face to face, and had the opportunity to make his defense concerning the charge laid against him. And here he's following in line with Proverbs, which is the idea that every man's case sounds good until it's brought to the cross-examination, until the second side of the story is heard. He recognizes that these people can bring whatever accusations they want. Anyone in this world can bring any accusation against anyone they want. But until they have evidence and proof and have heard the other side, we don't have the full story, because there's always two sides to everything. And that's something to keep in mind of. Especially those who want to go into pastoral ministry. It's very hard to advise, for example, couples how to live, how to interact with one another, how to handle disagreements or arguments when you're only getting one side. You can get tiny little snippets of it. You can get one person's case. And yet, very often, when you hear the other side, you'll find that, oh, wait, maybe the person who first came was not fully innocent. Imagine that. And we should apply this to ourselves. Maybe I find that I have to do this very often. It's very easy for me to advise other couples, to advise others, like, hey, this is what the scripture says. Like, I am a third party to maybe try to assist and help you guys come to a resolution or a compromise. But then in my own relationship, with my fiance, sometimes I'm imperfect. Sometimes I let my emotions get to me, and I need to take a step back and even come out of the situation and say, okay, but what does the scripture say? And if I were advising someone else, how would I advise them, knowing both sides? Like, how would I even advise myself in the situation? How would I advise someone who is exactly like me in that same situation? I'd probably say, hey, calm down. Calm down, be more Christ-like. Love your future wife as Christ loved the church, giving himself up for her. And very often that's helpful, because we need to recognize that our side also is not the only side. So when they came together here, I made no delay, but on the next day took my seat on the tribunal and ordered the man to be brought. And when the accusers stood up, they brought no charge in his case. Of such evils as I supposed. Rather, they had certain points of dispute with him about their own religion and about a certain Jesus who is dead, but whom Paul asserted to be alive. Being at a loss how to investigate these questions, I asked whether he wanted to go to Jerusalem and be tried there regarding them. But when Paul had appealed to be kept in custody for the decision of the emperor, I ordered him to be held until I could send him to Caesar. And then Agrippa said to Festus, I would like to hear the man myself. And tomorrow, said he, you will hear him. And so he just gives an outline of what happened, but also recognizing that, hey, this is a dispute of religion. It doesn't seem to be that he's broken any Roman laws. And so he's recognizing that, but saying, hey, he wanted to be brought before Caesar, so that's what we're doing. We just tried to respect him as a Roman citizen, which they had failed to do when they bound him on accident previously, some of the centurions. So on the next day, Agrippa and Bernice came with great pomp, big, great people. We sure do love having our long fringes on the robes, right? Like, no matter where you go, it's the same. Whether it's the religious leaders or the Roman governors or Agrippa and Bernice with great pomp, pride is a problem. We always need to humble ourselves. But they entered the audience hall with the military tribunes and the prominent men of the city. Then at the command of Festus, Paul was brought in. And Festus said, King Agrippa, and all who are present with me, you see this man about whom the whole Jewish people petitioned me, both in Jerusalem and here, shouting that he ought not to live any longer. But I found that he had done nothing deserving of death. And as he himself appealed to the emperor, I decided to go ahead and send him. But I have nothing definite to write to my lord about him. Therefore I've brought him before you all, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that after we have examined him, I may have something to write. For it seems to me unreasonable in sending a prisoner not to indicate the charges against him. So even the outsiders, even the non-believers could see that it was absolutely whack. It was it was just false charges. there is wisdom, and it's noticeable.